everybody, Shoebox Legends here. Thanks for joining me for another episode today. This is going to be a Signature Sundays installment, where, as we always do in these, we'll take a look at some autographed cards from my vast sports card collection that I've been accumulating for coming up on 15 years now. And today we're going to be looking at some of my favorite autos, period, from the last 10 years. A set that Panini put out close to 10 years ago now in 2013-14 called Classics Signatures, which was a hockey release featuring a ton of awesome on-card autographs of greats of the game. Did an episode on this recently where I showed some Calgary Flames autos from the set as kind of a shout out to my buddy Sean over at Sean Stuff, who's a Flames fan. And today I thought we might take a look at some Philadelphia Flyers as kind of a shout out to my friend Brian over at Walk and Balk, who's a Flyers fan and collector. So I'll leave a link to Brian's channel below in case you're not familiar with Walk and Balk, and have a feeling he'll enjoy the 5 autos that we're going to look at here today from this set. So without further ado, here's the first. We have Rick Tocchet, right winger, and have to be honest and say his autograph itself is not really anything to write home about. Just got a couple of kind of squiggly lines there, really not much else going on, but a nice looking card from his days, a nice photograph from when he captained the Flyers, so pretty neat one there. Rick had a pretty successful NHL career. He did win a Stanley Cup with the Penguins. He was on those one of those powerhouse early 90s teams with like Yager, Lemieux, Francis. He was a 4-time All-Star, so pretty solid player, not a Hall of Famer or anything like that. After his playing days were over, he did run into some legal trouble in the mid to late 2000s, was running a gambling ring with some other athletes. It was football, it wasn't hockey they were gambling on, and he was out of the sport, but it still got him into some legal trouble, but he's kind of repaired all that. He's back in the league, and he is now actually an analyst for the NHL coverage on TNT that just started this year with that new contract. So I've seen him doing some work for that channel between periods and is part of that crew over there. So Rick Tocchet, first auto that we have today. Here's a nice look at the back. And nice write-ups by Panini on these cards. Like, just look at the first sentence here. It does a great job describing Tocchet as a folk hero in Philly for his blue-collar work ethic. Ferocious hitter and a respected leader. I think that's, a very accurate description. So in addition to designing nice cards and getting some beautiful, bold on-card autographs, Panini did a good job with the card backs in this release. Next up, number 2 for today, we got Kjell Samuelsson. And that's right, for those of you who weren't hockey fans back in the day, it is not pronounced Kjell, it's Kjell. It's a Swedish name. He actually began his career over in Sweden and moved to the NHL relatively late, generally speaking. I think he was about 26 or 27 when he finally made his NHL debut, transferred over from Sweden. I think he was also on one of the Stanley Cup champions early 90s Penguins teams with Rick Tocchet that I mentioned earlier. And I could be wrong about this. I'm sure Brian or somebody else will correct me in the comments if I am, but I want to say he's still in the Flyers organization today at some type of a coaching capacity, like player development or something like that. And as the back indicates here, he was a 2-time winner of the Barry Ashby Award, which goes to the most outstanding defenseman on the Flyers. So pretty good considering he wasn't with the Flyers all that long, just a few seasons. He was a key member of their defensive core for his time there. And lastly, he has a much nicer signature, complete with uniform number, than his one-time teammate Rick Tocchet does. Next up, we have Keith Primo. This is a name that collectors from the 90s will definitely remember. He was coming onto the scene as a highly touted draft pick right as the junk wax era kind of exploded in hockey. So he was in a lot of sets in the early 90s. I would say he lived up to his potential at times. There were stretches where he was, one of the most dominating players in the league for, a run during the playoffs or a portion of a season. But overall, I'm not sure that he, fully met expectations, which, to be fair, were lofty heading into his career. He did briefly play for the Hartford Whalers, my favorite franchise, at the very end of their existence and moved with the team to Carolina, where he went on to become team captain. And sadly, he was forced out of the game a little bit earlier than he would have preferred, I'm sure, due to concussions and some of the issues and fallout from those concussions. So obviously the league is improving at their awareness of those and their response to concussions and head injuries, same as the NFL is. But back in his day, some of those guys took some pretty brutal hits, and unfortunately he felt some effects from some of that and had to hang up the skates a little bit earlier than he would have liked. If we take a look at the back here and take a look at the summary, nice backs. I just like the design with the hockey stick here, the retro feel. Even though there's no photograph on the back, I think these were a home run. So to me, I mean, these are almost the perfect card. The back design is great. You get complete career player stats because all these guys are retired. Nice little thoughtful write-up. Like I said, the design on the front is understated, but really classy looking. And then again, all of these are on card, held and signed by the athlete. So pretty cool Keith Primo there. Moving along, the penultimate card for today is Rod Brindamore. So this is a name that modern NHL fans absolutely will recognize. He is the current coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. He played 20 seasons in the NHL, though, and actually captained the Hurricanes to a Stanley Cup championship back in 2006 when he had been in the league for a long time at that point. He is widely acknowledged as one of the best hockey players not enshrined in the Hall of Fame. He's got, close to 1,200 career points. I think he's at like 1,180 or somewhere around there. Which is a tremendous amount of tallied scores for somebody who didn't get inducted. So, obviously the cutoff always has to come somewhere, and there's always going to be, someone who is the best or one of the best players who has not gotten the call. And unfortunately for Rod, in his case, he happens to be that guy in the world of hockey. So, who knows? He's still involved in the game and in a coaching capacity and has definitely enjoyed some success with Carolina, so maybe someday he could still make it down the line, sort of like along the Joe Torre lines, where I guess if your combined success as a player and coach is enough, maybe he'll get in. I could see, if he's able to coach the Hurricanes or another franchise to a Stanley Cup or two, and you combine that with his career accolades as a player, maybe he gets in someday. But for now, he is on the outside looking in. And last but not least, what I think is probably the most intriguing of these 5 cards, Tim Kerr. Now, why is Tim Kerr significant other than his awesome mustache? And you can't really see it here, but his trademark curly red hair. I think Tim Kerr is one of the most intriguing what could have been stories in the history of the NHL. So he was an absolute machine in terms of goal scoring. When he emerged on the scene in the mid-'80s, he was arguably the best scorer in the league, just pure goal scorer, right up there with Gretzky and Bossy and guys like that, throughout the mid-'80s. He had a run of 4 straight campaigns where he exceeded 50 goals a season. And even during the high-scoring era that was the 80s, that is an impressive statistic. He was such an effective scorer that to this day, he still ranks in the top 10 in terms of goals per game on average over the course of his career. And that is pretty amazing to think about. That's kind of a cool Barstool trivia fact. I don't think even most diehard hockey fans would probably predict that Tim Kerr, of all people, would be a top 10 goals per game scorer in the history of the league. That's for players who have at least 200 career goals. But just super impressive. And unfortunately, similar to Keith Primo, but even more so in the case of Tim Kerr, the injuries took a toll and they leave you kind of wondering what may have been had he been able to stay healthy. He was hurt very badly. I think it was shoulder injuries right in the prime of his goal scoring ability. So, he went from those 4 straight 50-goal seasons to having injury completely decimate his next year. He missed almost the entire year. I think scored like 3 goals or something like that. I remember reading somewhere that he endured like a dozen surgeries or more to repair his shoulder. And he was just never the same guy when he came back. He had some personal tragedy that he went through as well, off the ice, and all those things combined really just took their toll. And he was out of the game in his early 30s. And you just have to wonder if this guy could have stayed healthy, avoided those injuries for even a handful of seasons more. Than he did. I think he may have cracked the Hall and gone down as someone who, is known as one of the premier goal scorers of his era. But as it is, as things broke for him with the injury, he's sort of a novelty now in the history of the game, and someone who for a brief 4-year stretch was a flash in the pan and looked like he was absolutely destined to be one of the great ones. But sometimes the world just doesn't cooperate with that, and you catch some tough breaks. But nonetheless, I think that makes Tim actually a very intriguing athlete. I'm a big fan of those guys that are kind of a little bit below the radar, but were very, very effective and kind of get forgotten to the sands of time to an extent. So I think that is absolutely the case for Tim Kerr, and very glad to have his autograph as part of my collection of autographs from this set that I absolutely adore. So that is the episode for this week. Just wanted to look at those 5 Philadelphia Flyers. Again, a shout out to my buddy Brian over at Walk and Balk, who's a big Flyers fan and has recently gotten into collecting hockey cards. Hope you enjoyed these, Brian. I actually do have some more Flyer autographs from this set, believe it or not, but I wanted to keep this episode a reasonable length, so I'll have more Philadelphia autos down the line. But for today, I really appreciate everybody stopping by and spending a little bit of your time here on the channel. Hope to hear from you in the comments, and I will be back in the very near future with some more sports card content. Until then, take care.